thank you. Thank you. So my name is Gary. I work as a trends analyst for Google for the past 8 years. My job is to look at trends and then make up lots of stuff and then report that to our leads. And my job is also to talk to people like you. I did a similar presentation at SEO on the Beach in Spain. And I think that's how I met Francois as well. And that's how I came here to Paris. Sometimes I try to be funny. Usually I fail. Please laugh anyway, otherwise your site will be penalized. Yes, if you laugh, it's good for your rankings. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk about some basic stuff. Someone touched on, in the previous panel, someone touched upon that. But basically, we want to cover the basics again, because what we see is that some people are forgetting the very basics of how a website should operate. So we will do a recap. Then I will talk about a little more complicated thing, which essentially is JavaScript generated sites. Then mobile first indexing, because who does not talk about mobile first indexing nowadays? And I also have to join the crowd. And then I think we will have Q&A. I'm looking at the organizers, but they are not. We will have Q&A. Yes, we will have Q&A as well. So let's start. Basics. Good URLs are critical. Now, with all the fancy stuff, all the fancy CMSs and frameworks that come out, websites started to generate URLs that are completely incompatible with search engines. Not just Google, any search engine that does crawling and indexing the way it's been done for the past 25 years or whatever. You have to make sure that your URLs are accessible to crawlers. One URL per content. That means that if you have the site example.com, then example.com/sushi.html should serve only content about sushi and not with a click change the content to something else, beef tartare or whatever. And not change the URL. If you have hashtags in the URL, which is very common nowadays, basically that symbol with the, I don't know what it's called. I call it hashtag. It's probably not hashtag, is it? Is it? Okay, hashtag, okay. We'll call it hashtag. Then you have to try that URL in Search Console or Bing Webmaster Tools or wherever you want to try it and see what that specific search engine sees. Because if it doesn't see the content that you meant to show to users and to search engines, then you are not going to rank for that piece of content. And that's another point that I'm going to make. Content is king. Who heard that before? Who does not believe it? Come on. Everyone believes it? Really? Okay. Okay, then I will not. So, next. Canonicalize and HTTPS. Don't leave it to search engines. Use rel canonical. Yes, we can decide which URL to show in search results. But sometimes we mess it up. Not just Google, also DuckDuckGo, also Bing, also other search engines. If you use the rel canonical tag, then you give a very, very, very strong hint to search engines which URLs to show in search engines. Make use of it. Do make use of it, because most search engines, actually all search engines that I know of, consider it a very, very heavy signal. Next, HTTPS. I'm fairly certain some people noticed that Chrome is pushing very, very strongly for HTTPS. And in fact, it started to mark or to show HTTP as insecure in general. Why do you think they do that? They do that for the users. They don't want users' data to be compromised on the way. Basically, not the content that they receive, not the content that they send to servers. But for you as a webmaster or SEO or website owner or whatever, for you it's also very, very, very important. I don't know of a European example, but the first time I saw this, I was completely shocked. I was in the US. I was on a very large carrier that has been doing some interesting stuff. Basically, when this happened, Wikipedia was not HTTPS yet. And I started seeing ads, like really weird ads on Wikipedia. And first I was like, oh, okay, like Wikipedia switched to a new monetization model or something. But then I realized that Wikipedia is still asking for donations. And then suddenly it was in my brain, it was like, okay, this does not compute. It's not working. What happened? It was the carrier that I was using that was injecting ads in the HTML of the pages on the way back to the user. This can happen to your site as well. Carriers, as well as other malicious entities, let's say, can swap out the ads on the website that you manage or own. They can just inject ads in your HTTP websites, and that's not good for you. They might inject, like let's say you are running a non-profit organization, and maybe they inject some stupid porn ads, for example. Your users will run away like crazy. With HTTPS, they cannot do this anymore. It's virtually impossible to do it. And that's one good reason to go to HTTPS if you still think that users' privacy is not that much to look for. Sitemaps. Tell search engines about your URLs. If you don't tell search engines about your URLs, it may take lots of time for them to discover them. Sitemaps is the second most important discovery signal, I guess, for Google. First is discovering through links. Make use of it. If you think that a URL should appear in Google, well, Google search, then put that in a sitemap and make sure Google knows about the sitemap. You don't have to use Google Search Console to submit sitemaps. You can just put it in the robots.txt, for example, but do submit sitemaps somehow. If you are putting links on your site, how should a link look like in the HTML? It should be like an A tag, right? It should have, normally it should have like an href and then a URL that you are linking to. And then some anchor text, and then you close the tag, right? That's how it typically looks like. Now, these new frameworks that are coming out, they are changing how links are generated or what happens when you click on specific elements that look like links. For example, my favorite example is when they have a div tag, like div, and then with JavaScript, they transform that into a clickable object that takes you to another page. Well, that's batshit stupid. Search engines will not ever understand that. Why? Because you can literally do that to any element on the site. Anything. Unless we get rid of links from our ranking signals, we will need an A tag with an href attribute, and in the href attribute, you have a URL, either absolute or relative, that you point the user to. You have to have this if you want Google to use those links. If you don't, then sure, you use a div tag and whatever. And this is super important for internal ranking. Internal linking. Internal ranking, wow. As I said, discovery, or the most important discovery signal for Google is following links. If we don't see the links, then we can't follow them. And if we don't follow the links, then some of your pages might be discovered, well, never. Next, metadata. This might be a shocking revelation, but Google does not rewrite titles as often as you think. Our metrics, internal metrics, show that we actually rewrite titles for quite a small fraction of all the titles that we show for search results. And usually we pick, or most of the time, we pick the titles that people put in the HTML, in the title HTML tag. Now, if you have a stupid title that is completely irrelevant to the page, like, for example, untitled page, that's a very common title, then, of course, we are not going to use it. Like, it's irrelevant to the page, so why would we want to use that? Of course, we are going to rewrite it. But if you want to have control over the titles, then put a relevant title in the title tag of the HTML. Meta description, same thing, especially if you don't have much content on the page. If you have lots of images, for example, and you can't come up with more keyword stuff text on the page, then make use of the meta description. Put there a paragraph or few lines of content that you think is relevant and that describes the page accurately and precisely. Now, how long should the meta description be? 160? 320? 20 centimeters. That is the best answer I've got so far. Like ever. Okay. We don't care how long it is. We are just going to trim it. Was that?
Wasn't it like 360 and suddenly you guys...
That was a snippet.
Huh?
That was the snippet length.
That was just a snippet.
Well, people, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. People need a number for whatever reason. And someone decided that we should just say a number, and someone said 320, and then like a week later we changed the snippet length back to 160. So that's one of the reasons why we don't want to say a number. Basically, write a piece of text there that describes the page, and then we are going to take care of it. Basically, we are going to take out parts of it if it's needed, and then concatenate them together, or the two sides. But don't focus on like 160, 320, 270, whatever. Just write something there that describes the page.
Can you confirm that the snippet is still staying at 160?
I can't.
You can't confirm that?
No, because like the snippet is a dynamic thing. Like just today I was searching for, when I was still in Zurich, I was searching for a bistro around this area. And some of the snippets were like, what's probably 20 characters long. That was 20. Then I searched for weather because I heard that someone likes to pick the weather example, in the previous panel at least. And then some of the results had like the long snippet. I can't tell you that it will stay forever 160 characters. For now, it looks like this week it's, I don't even know, 320 or 3 whatever. But maybe next week it will be 170. Then the week after 184. So,
Yeah, that costs us a lot of waste of efforts and resources at large enterprises because people want to just, like you say that you can target 360, they can go for 360.
but that's not the point. Basically, your meta description helps you rank. That's why you put content there. That's why you describe your content there. Like whatever you put in the meta description will help you. Don't write like the first piece of War and Peace there. Don't write the whole novel, but do put content, enough content to describe your page accurately. If that's 500 characters, then it's 500 characters. It's not that much different from the first lead paragraph that you put visibly on the page.
Yeah, I know, I got that point. People are not going to tell the complexity of writing 500 if the guys only going to show what's as an average for the most.
But we are going to pick the relevant parts of the.
I agree with you in that. You're not going to write rubbish.
Right. Let's leave this to the Q&A. Okay. So I swear there's no limit. You can write as long as you want. Don't go overboard. Describe your page accurately and precisely in the meta description. Images. People forget about images a lot, and actually I decided that next year I'm only going to talk about images and not going to talk about web search anymore. Basically, what I want to tell you is that with images, you can actually win the game. Because many people forget about this search engine, yet it's the second biggest search engine on the google.com or Google property. If you don't mark up your images well, then we are not going to be able, what are those guys doing there? Funny. We are not going to be able to rank properly those images. Make use of the alt text. Basically describe the image that you are marking up precisely with a few words. Don't write 160, 320 characters there. Just a few words. But use it wisely. Don't keyword stuff, because then we are not going to consider that. And use natural language. Don't use puppy, puppies, dog, cat, animal, separated all with a comma. Just write, here's a picture of a cute puppy. That's it. Add captions. For images, it's quite important the surrounding text. Basically, from the surrounding text, we learn what the image is about. If you don't put surrounding or captions or there's no text around the image, then we will have a harder time understanding what the image is about. Here, usually, there's a question about us using automatic image understanding, basically using machine learning to understand images. We do have that. We do use it for images, but typically it would work well for things like Apple, or, I mean Apple as in the fruit, or Eiffel Tower. If you have like a picture of a person and there are multiple people in the picture that are unknown, but that one person that you want to show in search results is sort of famous, we are not going to be able to tell that that person is Michael Jackson or, I don't know, Edith Piaf. We are going to be able to tell that there are people in the picture, but not that one of the people is famous. Lazy loading. I have a love-hate relationship with lazy loading, because for users it's excellent. Basically, the page will load much faster if you do lazy loading. But then for search engines, very often that will hide the images, and search engines will not load the images. Why is that? That's because even if search engines are rendering the pages, basically doing the same thing that a browser would do and execute JavaScript and blah, 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 they will not scroll. And most of the lazy loading is triggered by scroll events. So basically when the user scrolls into a position, in a particular position on the page, then the image pops up. But since search engines don't scroll, they just load like 10,000 pixels or whatever, pixels, 10,320. They will not see the images. So when you do lazy loading, make sure that you include the image, the same image tag that you would lazy load, but with a proper URL to the image in a no script tag. Basically, it will not slow down the users because they will be able to execute the JavaScript, but for search engines, it will be an immense help, and they will be able to see your images. And then content. So content is king because without content, you cannot rank. Basically, if you don't have beef tartare on the page, then you are not going to rank for beef tartare. But if you do have beef tartare on the page, then you want to describe that clearly. You don't want to use some text that sounds like as though some machine wrote it. You don't want to keyword stuff. You don't want to put or load the page with keywords. Write as though you would explain what beef tartare is to your friend or to your partner or to your, well, probably not your boss, because then you might get fired, but yeah, just write clearly. And use ads reasonably. I don't care what the AdSense team is saying, I'm on the organic search team. If you overload your page with ads, then you are going to have a hard time ranking. We do see the number of ads on the page, or basically ads looking areas if they are blocked with robots.txt. Use them reasonably. If the AdSense team is telling you that 32 ad blocks is okay on the page, then maybe don't believe them. Maybe just put 12 ads on the page. Don't basically take a look at the page, see if the page for you as a user is compelling or not. And then interstitials. I know that they convert amazingly. Basically, if you pop up in my face an interstitial that tells me to buy that beef tartare, I will probably buy it. But for most users, that's a very annoying experience, especially if it happens on every single page that we want to visit. Maybe have another kind of trigger. Basically, if I'm leaving the page, let's say, then maybe, hey, wait, we have something else as well. Or you have a big promo, and if they hover over some area of the page that describes that promo, then pop up the interstitial, but not when I enter the page. I mean, come on. I just arrived to your page. I don't want to subscribe to your newsletter yet. I don't even know what your site is about. Use them reasonably. This is part of our ranking algorithm, looking for interstitials. And especially on mobile, you are going to rank worse if you overdo interstitials. And play Need for Speed. Now, we have lots of tools for this. And I mean, Google has lots of tools. I don't know why we have 4 or 5 tools that do the same thing, but we do. Pick a tool and analyze your pages in that tool. Look at the metrics, look at the suggestions that it gives you, and start working on them. Now, speed is also a ranking factor, especially on mobile, or will be? It is, no, it is. But generally, speed in ranking only affects a fraction of websites, basically the sort of sites that load in 20 plus seconds, like CNN. Oops, I shouldn't have said that. Yeah, if your site is super slow, then you will see a negative effect in search results because of that. But even if that's not true, and basically your site loads in like 15 seconds or 10 seconds, you might still be able to optimize that. Why would you do that? That's because we know, not just Google, but like other independent researchers as well know that faster pages generally convert better. People will click on your ads more, they might subscribe to your newsletter more, whatever your conversion is, they will do it more. Now, like 2 weeks ago, I got in an argument with Brett Tupke, who's the organizer for PubCon. Basically, he was saying that this is not true for every site. Sure, I mean, there might be exceptions, of course, but generally, for most users on most websites, this is true. If your site is faster, then people will convert better. And look at how users react to your optimizations. It might be that you compress the images too much, for example, and then they will like your pages less. And then you might need to revert that change or compress differently, but do look at what users are telling you indirectly. And for this, analytics probably is a good thing. Also, don't ask me in the Q&A analytics questions, please, because I don't know anything about analytics, or AdWords, or AdSense. No, Search Console I do, yeah. Structured data. Check for new types, add them as they become available. Basically, every piece of structured data that you add to your pages will help search engines, well, Bing and Google, at least. I don't know about Yandex. Will help search engines understand your pages better. If you talk about apartment rentals, if you have structured data, then we are going to understand that pages about apartment rentals in Paris much easier. But use structured data reasonably. Basically, if you have, again, apartment rentals, then you don't want to add structured data about recipe to that page because, well, it just doesn't make sense. And check validity. Most of the time when structured data is not working for someone is because the structured data is invalid. Basically, we have tools, probably several tools, because that's how engineers get promoted at Google, and check the validity of the structured data. And a note on structured data. Who heard of Rakuten? 1, 2, 3, whoa, that's many people. And FC Barcelona, that's how you know about it? Yeah, of course. Anyway, so Rakuten is like a stupid big site in Japan, like insanely big. And they have everything from my grandmother to recipes. Well, they probably don't have grandmother, but anyway. And they started playing with structured data around, I think, 2012. Basically, structured data was still kind of new in search engines. But yeah, they started adding structured data to the pages that made sense to add structured data to. And by, I think, 2016, they added structured or recipe markup as well to their recipe site. And this happened. They got to the recipe site 2.7 times more traffic from Google search, and the session duration was 1.5 times more. Now, I'm not saying that this will absolutely happen to your site as well. I can't promise that. But this is a good example where structured data managed to help a site do better. And now the complicated part. What is it? JavaScript site, okay. So how search works? Who knows how search works? Like the basics of search? No one knows. Oh, Francois knows. That's okay, 2 people. Well, that's sad. Internally, we split search in 3 categories. Basically, we have crawling, we have indexing, and we have ranking and serving. With crawling, what we do is basically we have that stupid Google bot that goes around crawling the web, like, well, headless chicken, and grabs pages, sends it to indexing for, well, extracting information about those pages. Indexing, what it does is trying to make sense of the content and the metadata of those pages. Basically, it will try to decide if it's recipes, and then what kind of recipe and what kind of keywords that particular page should rank for. Basically, if it's beef tartare, then probably should rank for tartare, but not for chicken, and for beef, but not for crocodile. Ranking and serving, basically, well, it's ranking and serving. Basically, we use 200 plus signals to make sure that we are showing users the best possible content, and serving is basically just showing people those results. Now, in indexing, for years, for 15 years maybe, what happened is just like basic understanding. We took the HTML and that's it. We introduced rendering a few years ago, which meant that we started understanding JavaScript sites as well. Basically, if you added or you injected content in your pages with JavaScript, what the hell? Then we started noticing that as well and started to understand that as well. We are using, I don't remember, Chrome 41 for that, which is like a stupid ancient Chrome, which is one of the problems. And also it does not have ES6 support. Ask me what ES6 is. I have no idea what it is. But the rendering team told me to add that there. So I'm telling you that it does not have ES6 support, and that's super important. Anyway, so we are in the process of upgrading our rendering engine to something more recent, and then they, as in the rendering engineers, they promise that they will keep it close to head, the version number. But currently, this is what we live with. That means that if you are using some new JavaScript API, or, well, not you probably, but your developers, then Google's rendering will not understand that. Maybe Bing's will, or Yandex's will, but Google's will not. So when you do render, well, when you do some JavaScript stuff on your page, then make sure you test it either with Chrome 41 or with Fetch and Render in Search Console. Fetch and Render is literally using the production rendering engine that we are using in indexing as well. So what you will get in Fetch and Render is exactly what we would see. Ah, look who's running out of time. We don't use storage APIs in rendering. So if you are relying on any of the Chrome storage APIs for whatever, I don't even know why would you rely on that, but we are not going to use that. They are manually disabled in the rendering engine. And then the next thing is fast pages render better. If you are using like a million round loop in JavaScript to render something on your page, if it takes too long, then at one point Google's rendering will just be like, okay, I'm done with this, it's just whatever. Make sure that those pages or the JavaScript executes quite fast, and we don't have to, we and also the users don't have to wait for the JavaScript to do its magic. One thing you can do if you see if your pages are not showing right in Fetch and Render is to do this, deferred rendering. Oh no, wait, this is us doing this. What does this mean? Sorry, I confused two slides. This will be the next. dynamic rendering. This is what I wanted to say. So do dynamic rendering if you see that your pages are not looking right in fetch and render in Search Console. Basically, this is what we used to call pre-rendering. It's just, we got a new engineer and he didn't like the name pre-rendering, so we now call it dynamic rendering. Maybe he will get promoted for this, I don't know. But basically what you are doing here is that when you identify that a bot is accessing your page, then you execute the JavaScript on the server, on your server, for the bot, for the crawler, and you serve them the content that users would see. There are rendering engines for this that you can install on your server, and no. If you go here, that's a link that I generated yesterday night. So if you go there, then you will arrive to this page that explains how to set this up. Again, you only have to do this if your pages look funny in fetch and render. If they look right, then forget about it for now, until your developers implement something new that will mess up how Google sees your page. And if you don't have anything better to do, that guy, that Geek on Out thing, he wrote this dynamic rendering doc. He's quite funny, not as funny as me, but you can follow him. Mobile first indexing, because I want to leave time for Q&A. Who heard about mobile first indexing? You're also funny. Okay, so what does mobile first indexing mean? Mobile first indexing means that we are going to use the mobile version of your content for indexing and ranking purposes instead of the desktop content that we've been using for the past, how old is Google? 18 years, whatever. Or so far, we try to stick ourselves to moving sites that are mobile first indexing ready. Basically, we had this internal funny classifier that basically could tell us whether the site that's being moved to mobile first indexing will lose traffic from Google or not. And this was great. We moved probably 50% of the sites that are impressed in search to mobile first indexing. But now we have the other half. And the other half will probably lose traffic. But to ensure that our users still get the best results for the device that they are searching on, we do have to move them. Basically, if I'm searching for mobile and Google is using the desktop content for ranking, then I might end up in a situation where I click on beef tartare and I end up on the desktop side, or I end up on a page that doesn't have beef tartare because the mobile page of that site does not contain beef tartare like the desktop page, but chicken tartare, which sounds disgusting. So yeah, we are going to move not just mobile-friendly pages, not just mobile first indexing ready pages, but pretty much anything that comes in our way. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but you are also going to get a message like this when your site is, or the site you manage, is moved to mobile first indexing. It explains a bit more like what this means to you. But if you want to prepare for mobile first indexing, then you want to make sure that the critical content, basically the content that you want to rank for, is the same on the desktop and the mobile version of your site. Basically, if you want to rank for beef tartare, then you want to have beef tartar on your mobile site as well, or your mobile version of that page as well. This applies on video and images as well. Also, I said critical content. Critical content just, or in my head at least, it just means content that you want to rank for. So basically, if you have beef tartar and then below that you have a huge blog that explains your site is about recipes and you keyword stuff that to eternity, then you probably don't need to include that because you're not going to rank for that anyway. Metadata, structured data, all this well, hidden data that are only for search engines, make sure that it's also on the mobile side. Typically, people implement structured data only on their desktop side because, well, desktop was the thing that people used for 20 years or whatever. But that changed. Now people use more mobile. And yes, I know that there are exceptions for sites that where the majority of the users is not mobile yet, but that's an exception. Internal links, if you think they are, if you think that a link is valuable for search engines, then make sure that it's also on the mobile side. Yeah, I'm leaving these leeways in how I say things. Basically, I'm well aware that on mobile you have less real estate, right? Like you have less space. That's why I say that put critical content on your mobile pages. That's why I say that internal links that you think are useful for search engines or users. Basically put there whatever makes sense, and obviously you can't include, in most cases, everything that you have on the desktop page. Another thing is that make use of those tabs and accordions. Basically, if you go on to Wikipedia on mobile, then it's amazing. They have these accordions, and basically they show you only the part of content that is relevant to whatever you clicked on in the search result. And the rest of the content is hidden behind an accordion. We still see that content because it's just CSS hidden, but it doesn't get in the user's way. You can do that too. That content will have full weight in ranking, but at least it doesn't affect negatively the UX of the page. Crawl capacity. This was the #1 reason why we couldn't move a bunch of sites. Basically, somehow they managed to set up their server in such a way that Googlebot smartphone is rate limited, and we just couldn't crawl as much with Googlebot smartphone. Well, it would be great if you didn't do that, because if we can crawl enough, then we might not see your fresh content, for example, and you are going to end up in the mobile first index eventually, and then that will suck for you. Preemptive Q&A, because I know you will ask me. Responsive design. It's awesome. Strongly recommended that you do responsive design if you haven't already. But if you have m.site or mobile.example.com, or you have dynamic serving, it's perfectly fine. You're going to rank fine. We recommend responsive design because we strongly believe that it's much easier to maintain than any other site. Basically, you don't have two versions of the site. You don't have two versions of the content. You have one site, one page, and you just change the design. It doesn't use desktop site. What? What did I want to say with that? Oh yeah, I don't know. Let's keep that. Yeah. Thank you. So basically, if you have both the desktop version and the mobile version of the site, mobile-first indexing will never, ever use a desktop version. Basically, it will always be the mobile version. But if you have only a desktop site, then you are going to be included in the index, and you are going to show up in search results. But because it's not mobile-friendly, well, you're going to rank lower in mobile results. But that's already happening since the past 4 years or something. So that's it. Hamburger menu, there was a small fight on Twitter about this. Basically, someone saying that hamburger menus are bad for SEO. The other person was like, hamburger menus are amazing for SEO. Third person, but it sucks for UX. And then the fourth person was like, no, it's amazing and the best thing that ever happened to us. Well, we don't care. Do what you want. We will see the hidden content, the hidden links in the menu. It's whatever. We really don't care. Same for subdomains and subdirectories. I know that Rand Fishkin is saying that like you have to pick one. I don't remember what he likes, but whatever. But honestly, for Google, we don't care. Honestly, we don't care. Pick whatever makes sense for your site or for your developers or whatever. Basically, for whatever reason, they can't create subdomains, only subdirectories, fine. If they can create subdirectories but not if they can create subdomains but not subdirectories, that's also fine. We don't care, really. Fold out content, fine. That's the Wikipedia example. Basically, if you have those accordions, for example, it's perfectly fine. We are going to see the content. The content will have full weight in ranking. You took out my slide. I had a happy person there. As someone who was doing like this. Whoa. That's it, I'm leaving. Oh, it was just a fun slide, whatever. All right, so Q&A?